Here's the scenario. You've been injured in a serious accident. The doctor says your recovery could take months, maybe even years, yet your insurance company is denying your claim every step of the way. If something like this happens to you, call me, Brian Goldfinger of Goldfinger Personal Injury Law. We have offices in Toronto, London, Peterborough, and now Kitchener-Waterloo. Visit goldfingerlaw.com and get us working for you.
Get Goldfinger today.
You know what I want?
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that is 3 in a row. 3 losses in a row for the Raptors. The latest one coming against the Cleveland Cavaliers, 104-96. And yes, it is the result of their sometimes nearly comatose offense and the limitations that come along with it. They face a lot of zone, man. Like way more than any other team in the NBA over this stretch. Way more than even we were seeing it during, kind of gearing up for the All-Star break, anything like that. It has just been turned up to 100. There's a lot of zone. There's a lot of doubling of Pascal Siakam, who was, I believe, top 5 before this stretch run. There's no doubt in my mind. I haven't seen the numbers, but I'm very, very comfortable saying that nobody else in the NBA has been doubled as much as he has since Fred and OG have gone down. And what he does with that attention, what the team does, attacking advantage off of the passes out of it, and how they're able to create, and just guys creating in single coverage outside of that. They're far too limited as a team, and their offense leaves them in positions where they get in trouble every single night, and they cannot beat Cleveland, who is a good team. Currently, they're not in the best form. Jared Allen left during this game, which made things a lot easier for the Raptors. He had a quad contusion, and so he missed the second half. That's of note, and especially since the Raptors made their run in the second half. But this is still a team that, they're a good team. They have Mobley. They have Garland. Garland was an all-star. They got a half of, Jared Allen, who is also an all-star. And Mobley is probably the best rookie in this class so far. He'll probably win Rookie of the Year. Lauri Markkanen had a decent game, kind of middling efficiency, but Cedi Osman, Kevin Love, they both popped off a little bit off the bench. And the Raptors, just quite frankly, they didn't have that type of bench production. They had, I guess, would be over 50 minutes of bench guys play. They only had 8 points off the bench, and all of those came from Precious Achiuwa, who did so on 10 shots, which I don't really have any problems with. It's, you want a guy who can create when the Raptors are so limited. For a long time, like Khem Birch ends up getting 5 points on 6 shots in this game, but for a long time, I think he was just 0 for 4, I think, or even 0 for 3, and you weren't getting anything offensively. Precious checks in, and he's not even somebody you have to, put the ball in his hands at the rim and wait for a layup or something. He might even be able to create something above the break, and that takes a bit of the pressure off of Gary or Pascal or Scottie even. And so his little stint of offense was pretty good. Unfortunately, for the first time in a few games, that wasn't coupled with, I think, his usually pretty great defense. Khem definitely had a better game than him in that regard, and Khem really started to play much better when he had the physicality advantage over guys like Mobley and Markkanen, but he really, really did struggle a lot against Jared Allen. So it was nice to see him have a little bit of a bounce back, even if it was aided by, the better center leaving the game. Chris Boucher, who entered the lineup, played as the, I guess, de facto small forward in this one. He did a pretty good job. 21 points, 7 boards, 3 steals. His range defensively, yes, he made a few mistakes. He ended up climbing over the back of Garland, will probably stand out. And there's a couple missed rotations in this game as well. But I think he probably registered out as more of a positive defender in this game. And considering that he hit 3 triples and was able to cut to the rim on a couple occasions, I think his output tonight he was damn good considering his role and what's expected of him typically. And the guys surrounding him who have a lot more attention, like Pascal or Gary Trent Jr., whether they did what was necessary of them is probably more of a question than what was asked of Chris Boucher, because 21, 7, and 3 on really nice shooting splits. I'll take that every time. And Pascal, I talked about just at the top of the podcast how often he's getting doubled. And you could see it in this game. It obviously helped a little bit in the second half that Allen wasn't there, because Allen is one of the premier rim defenders in the whole of the NBA. And Pascal, I think, what is it, 62 points on 35 shots in the last two games coming into this one, is figuring out these ingenious ways to get into the paint and to still score and do it efficiently. He didn't really find that mark in this game, although he did get to the line for 13 free throw attempts. He just only hit 7 of them. That's where Pascal, he's doing so many things that take him to the next level. He's doing so many things that are representative of an extremely good all NBA player. But in a game like this, where points are hard to come by, you got to be way more crisp from the free throw line. 7 to 13. That's inexcusable, honestly. And as tough as the ask is that he's getting every night, like, he only had 4 assists. He probably could have had like 8 or 10. He's diming people up. The ball isn't dropping in, and it's tough to watch, especially considering how bad they've been at scoring during the stretch. But he continues to plug away. He's being more decisive so that he can beat the double before it gets there. He's trying to punch gaps a little bit earlier, but that also means that he's getting less time to make decisions. That means that he's picking up the ball earlier, and he's kind of getting trapped to be a shooter at the rim and to put up difficult shots. And this is what he has to try and navigate as the main guy who doesn't have a jump shot to just pull up over this defense that's sinking in. He has to punch gaps. He has to beat doubles, and he has to do all this kind of stuff, and that requires decisiveness. And with decisiveness, you get trapped in your take, and you just have to go up with it, which is why 8 of 22, he ended up hoisting a lot of shots, but I'm not particularly mad at the outcome. I thought he did pretty well. I just wish he would have shot better from the free throw line, but them's the breaks. He's been so damn good lately, and this was a tiny little bit of a letdown. The overall floor game I was really happy with, honestly, and defensively he's still the sharpest player out there on the Raptors. Trent is not clearing him. Barnes isn't. Birch, Boucher, nobody's clearing him in these games. His court coverage and he's way more crisp on a lot of the rotations, and he has to recover for a lot of guys too. So the overall floor game I was pretty happy with from Pascal in a really difficult situation. It's just you gotta make those free throws, and when you don't make free throws, I mean, it makes your easy pickings to kind of say, get it together. What the hell are you doing? And I understand that, because just go to the line, be an NBA player, hit a few more of them. And that's something that he's been battling a little bit this year, and that's fine. The guy, Ken Birch does deserve a lot of credit as well, because if you listen to a lot of these podcasts, and if you extend so far past the reaction podcast I've talked about over the past however long, that I think Precious has been better than Cam, and not only better, but much better and deserving of the starting spot if it's going to be given to a center. And it will be during this stretch where Fred and OG are gone, especially at the same time. And Cam played better than Precious tonight. That's of note. But if you listen to the weekly podcasts, I have one with Sean Woodley coming out. I don't know if you're listening to this at night or in the morning, but the Monday morning it'll be out, and we talk, I would say, at length about maybe Precious, well, not maybe, definitely giving Precious that spot if it were under our control, and that we'd like to see that. So, Kem did, he had a good game tonight. And Scottie really taking it upon himself to kind of destroy dudes in single coverage. Pascal receives so much attention. Guys are sinking in on defense. If you get single coverage, you have to take advantage of it, even if it is a guy as physically and defensively imposing as Evan Mobley. Scottie still went after it. That's pretty damn impressive, because Mobley is not just a good defender for a rookie. He's just a damn good defender. I don't know if he's in the all NBA conversations. Not really. Allen has kind of absorbed a lot of that attention, and deservedly so. But Mobley is really tough to beat at the rim. And Barnes did it a couple times and didn't do it from these advantage situations. He had the ball. He dribbled into, Mobley's sphere, and he beat him there, and even got an and one on one occasion. And I just think Barnes was really good at hunting out opportunities for himself and others. and really pushed the ball when it was appropriate, slowed it down when it was appropriate. I thought his feel for the game in this one was pretty good. And he had, I think, some punch defensively that he doesn't always have in these games. Although, especially in the first half, man, there was a lot of mistakes. And I can see why he would make those mistakes because he's a floater just by, his proclivity defensively is to kind of float around, and that sometimes leaves his teammates in really tough positions trying to cover for him. And especially with Darius Garland, a guy who, when he gets downhill, starts to play with coverages a lot in what he manipulates and lanes he's trying to open up for his teammates or himself. That Barnes was getting baited out of position a lot in the first half. And, he was much better in the second half, but he was really, really bad in the first half. But overall, I found myself really impressed with Scottie. He played the most minutes in this game, and that felt, he wasn't the best player out there, but he was good. So yeah, he deserves some love and attention for that. And yeah, tough game for Gary. Just need him to hit more of his catch and shoot opportunities. He did create a little bit off the bounce, but certainly not as much as we would all like to see. And this is a tough situation for him because the Raptors are playing defenses that are sinking in. So he had that little run of attacking closeouts and getting to the rim and stuff like that. And by little run, I do mean a little run. It wasn't, a huge trend on the season or anything, but that's not really happening whatsoever anymore. There are no avenues to the rim for him, and that's something he struggles with to begin with. And he's not shooting the hell out of the ball on top of that. That's where it gets really tough for him because the jumper isn't really there right now. And not only those super difficult step back jumpers from 18 feet that sometimes fuel the Raptors as they're struggling offensively, but just the, white bread catch and shoot three from the corner or above the break. Those aren't going in at the rate that anybody would want them to. And he really over pursues defensively. And, he gets the steals. And I still think, on the year, he's probably graded out as, a positive defender. But it's certainly, well, it was always goofy that, NBA.com had him in the defensive player of the year ladder. I think he was as high as 4 in the early parts of the season. That was always very silly, but he's certainly not providing the same amount of defensive punch now as he was then. And, players have ups and downs throughout the year. And, maybe that comes back around the same way that hopefully the shooting will. But yeah, Young, Banton, Watanabe, Armani Brooks, who just, signed with the Raptors today and kind of suited up. Young, really bad game. Blown rotations and blown bunnies. He's the vet. He's supposed to bring a calming presence. He's supposed to make the plays that, sometimes other players mess up. He's supposed to be, dependable and stuff like that. And he just wasn't in this game. Tough to see. Them's the breaks. And yeah, Banton is kind of, the box score either recognizes him or it doesn't. Because it's just he's running out on the break. If something materializes, a few times over, then he'll have numbers. If it doesn't, then he won't. And in this game, I didn't notice that much different going on with Banton. He had 0 points. He missed both his shots, but I didn't find that this game was all that much different than anything else that he does. It's just not as many opportunities gifted by his teammates or anything like that. But for the most part, just a struggle. The Raptors, especially considering when Allen went out, they really rebounded quite well, and that is understandable because an all-star big left the game, and they felt that on offense and defense. But all things considered, I wasn't too upset with the defense tonight. It's the offense is what's losing them all these games. The huge uptick in the amount of zone that they're seeing, their inability to deal with it. A lot of their pet and set plays for zone involve Fred, and if they don't involve Fred, then they involve Gary, but Gary isn't shooting well at all, so they can't even run a lot of these flares where they're setting screens on space rather than players and just trying to create these looks that work really well for Fred and have worked for Gary in the past, but in these games they just don't even go to them. They just have to try and move the ball around until they can get the Cleveland defense moved to one side, maybe more so than the other, and maybe they end up with like a 2-on-2 on one side, and they can actually do a pick and roll on the zone on the side or something like that with Pascal. But the opportunities are few and far between as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, Reggie Evans Award, Scottie Barnes, a stick-to-itiveness, not hard-headedness, but he just went to work. He put the hard hat on, got after it, game in, game out, possession in, possession out, put in the work and did his thing. In the third loss in a row, it's tough to take too much away from it, but I thought he looked good, and he did so battling against the other. Well, there's maybe what, like four standout rookies from this draft in Scottie, Cade, Mobley, and Franz Wagner. And like Herb Jones is a second round pick, but he's playing like a lottery guy, so that's really nice for him. And yeah, I mean, Cade, we saw when the Raptors played the Pistons how much he has in his bag, and despite having middling numbers, you can see that he's on the precipice of something special. And Mobley and Barnes have been capturing the special qualities of themselves all year. So yeah, Reggie Evans Award. Top quick reaction comment is from DS, quote, "So we wasted a first round pick for a guy to sit on the bench. I'm loving this right now," end quote. Yeah, so this is something that I talked about with Sean Woodley. So if you listen to Raptors Weekly podcast, you'll hear it on Monday morning or whenever you get around to it. Is Precious had attributed a lot of his progression to being able to pick Thad's brain, and that's the human aspect of the trade. But as far as just Thad, what he's doing on the court, and this is something I've talked about before, it's tough to even trick yourself into thinking that, oh yeah, this guy, is worth trading, let's say, between the 15th and 20th pick for the 31st to the 34th. Like that jump in draft value, you would probably be you'd be hard pressed to find any team that would sign off on saying Thad's the guy. And there is some cap implications, but you don't want your team to ever be giving up first round picks to save money. That would be a travesty. I certainly wouldn't. I wouldn't appreciate that. And yeah, so it's a trade that we'll have to see how it looks at the end of the season. But it's pretty tough to see the upside in this one. But them's the breaks. Thanks for writing in, DS listener. Thanks for tuning in. Whether you got into it in the morning or at night, have a blessed day and goodbye.